The head, neck, and shoulders are intricately connected by several different muscles. The most superficial muscles being the upper trap, middle trap, and levator scapula. The brain communicates with these muscles through the 11th cranial nerve and the nerves at C3 and C4. These muscles contract the shoulder towards the neck, which causes pressure on the upper part of the vertebrae, creating tension and pain. The muscles that are much deeper are the transverso spinalis and splenius capitis. The nerves that innervate these muscles are found from the C1 through the C6. These muscles connect the head and neck, which means looking down, like reading, computer work, or especially phone or tablet work, can cause problems. Start in a side-lying position with a foam roller between the neck and shoulder. Use your top leg to press into the floor, rolling your body up, which will create pressure downward through that shoulder. You're trying to create as much movement between the ear and shoulder as possible while relaxing the head toward the floor. You may increase the intensity of work by rolling the foam roller up and down using your hand. To work different points of the neck, simply roll backwards, keeping the chin and chest directly in line while opening the shoulders to the ceiling. An additional way to create greater intensity is by creating a saw-like motion, pulling the end of the foam roller toward your neck and then relaxing. You need to allow yourself to relax during the saw-like motion to break down the muscle tissue in the upper trap and neck. Continue to change the position, working the areas that are most tender. If you are tensing your body, it is not helping. My recommendation is to continue this work anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes on each side before moving on. A common headache that comes through my door is when someone comes in and paints across the forehead the pain that they feel. Commonly, it's also associated to have eye pain with this sort of headache. The muscles typically causing this headache are actually on the back side of the head, and they are called the occipital muscles. When the occipitals get extremely tight, they pull on the back of the head over the top of the head, creating the tension and pressure you feel in the forehead. So let's take a look at how to release these muscles to get rid of your headache. Using 2 lacrosse balls directly on the back of the head and lying on the ground, use a book to elevate the lacrosse balls. You're going to press down into the lacrosse balls and move them around the back of your head until you find the part that is most tender. At this point, you're going to begin pressing your head down into the lacrosse ball as hard as you can tolerate. This pressure should recreate the headache that you commonly feel across your forehead. Continue this pressure for 30 seconds. I will continue to talk you through the 30 seconds here. Do not let up on your pressure. Continue to push as hard as you possibly can in the occipital muscles in the back of your head. Try even increasing the tension and feel the headache. You know you're doing it correctly if you continue to feel the headache the whole time you're on these muscles. And we finish in 3, 2, 1. Wonderful. Now we're done with the occipital release. Next, we're going to be working on the atlantoaxial junction and the rest of the cervicals. The first muscles for us to focus on are at the atlantoaxial junction, and they are called the obliquus capitis major, obliquus capitis superior and inferior, and the rectus capitis posterior minor. Once we have worked through those, we will work on the rotatories and the semispinalis cervicis. Laying on your back with a book under your head and neck, place the lacrosse balls directly in line with the junction of the head and neck. Once you have the lacrosse balls in that position, tilt the head up and down like you're nodding your head yes. This should cause a contraction of the muscle tissue on top of the lacrosse ball and then a stretch as you look down. Once you've completed the work on that junction, move down 1/2 inch to the next cervical and continue this process until you have worked your way down the entire neck. Be sure to get a tight contraction tucking the chin, followed by a strong contraction tilting the head back in order for this technique to work. If you get to a point where it feels like one side is worse than the other, you may rotate your head to that side and continue to nod yes. For example, if I had some extra tension on the left side of my neck, I would rotate my head to the left and continue to contract up and down. Remember to do this continuously through the entire neck, rotating to the left or right as needed. Our final release is going to be on the upper and middle trap and levator scapula. These muscles contract the shoulder to the head. This release requires a massage stick and a clear wall. We want to start by locating the trap and levator, which holds the shoulder up to the ear. Once located, lean against the wall, allowing the stick to press down into the shoulder. Once you've created that pressure, you can start turning your head down and away from that trap. You'll notice I continue to hold the massage stick with my right hand and let the massage stick push my left shoulder down. Carpal tunnel syndrome commonly is caused by forearm muscles that get overly tight and create compression on your carpals. We will start by working through the extensor digitorum, the extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis, and extensor carpi ulnaris. Start with a lacrosse ball on the upper part of the forearm. You'll notice when you make a fist and squeeze the knuckles up, the muscles will tighten in the upper part of the forearm near the elbow. Press down with the lacrosse ball and flex the wrist. Release the pressure on the lacrosse ball, returning the wrist to extension or knuckles up. Repeat this process multiple times over the top side of the forearm in the extensors of the wrist. Do this at a brisk pace. An additional way to work this muscle tissue is by using your own forearm. Locate the flexors of the wrist by squeezing the knuckles up. Lay your arm across your knees and press your elbow into the tissue. Repeat, knuckles up, pressure on, knuckles down, pressure off. Continue this process through the muscle on the top of the forearm. The next group of muscle tissue that creates more pressure on the carpals as well is on the inside of the forearm. These are called the flexor carpi radialis and ulnaris and palmaris longus. Using a technique like the extensors, start with an open palm, flexing your fingers towards the elbow as far as you can. After you put pressure down on the muscle tissue, using your opposite elbow, open your hand, pointing your fingers to the floor as far as you possibly can. Lift the pressure, flex the wrist, bringing the fingers to the starting position. Continue this process for roughly 30 seconds in multiple spots, working briskly. The next area to focus on is the retinaculum. This is a ligamentous band around the wrist that keeps the tendons close to the bone. Oftentimes, the tendons underneath the retinaculum get adhered and make it very painful within the carpals themselves. Focusing on the retinaculum, glide the thumb up and down the entire band, spanning from the mid-wrist all the way into the base of the hand. Work vigorously with firm pressure for 30 seconds in order to break adhesions that lie deep within the carpals. Now it's time to perform a joint mobilization. You can see there are several bones that make up the carpal area of the wrist. We want to simply restore some range of motion to the carpals. Using your opposite hand, create a tight squeeze around the wrist and drag the hand away from the elbow as you hold the wrist. Begin to rotate the wrist in a big circle. Continue mobilizing the wrist for 30 seconds. Now we're going to create a stretch that's going to help the nerves communicate with the wrist. Sitting in a chair, press the shoulder down towards the floor. Rotate the thumb and wrist backwards, then flex the wrist and fingers up to the ceiling. Create a neural glide by looking down and away from that arm. Continue to perform this stretch 30 to 60 seconds. To begin working the muscles that are most affected by de Quervain's, hold your hand with your thumb straight up in the air. Then locate the tendon that is most superficial or on top of the wrist. This tendon will be controlled by a muscle that runs up the arm towards the elbow. I want you to contract the muscle tissue by flexing your wrist up and down while you press into the muscle tissue with your thumb. If this is too difficult to use your thumb, Grab a lacrosse ball and place pressure directly onto the forearm using the palm of your hand. Remember to create this contraction 7 to 10 times, pressing straight into the muscle tissue near the elbow. Next, we are going to run pressure from the wrist up the forearm towards the elbow, creating a firm pressure, driving up and stretching the tissue. Again, we can use the lacrosse ball and just roll up the arm, creating a release of that tissue. The bicep is named that because there are two different attachment points near the shoulder. The short head attaches to the coracoid process, which is a part of the shoulder blade, and the long head goes over the humerus through the biceps channel and connects in the socket. Pain will be present inside your arm if there's a problem with the short head. If there's a problem with the long head, typically the pain will run over the shoulder. We're going to locate the head of the biceps that attaches near the forearm. To do this, flex your arm with your fingers on the bicep near the elbow and find the tendon at the base of the muscle belly. Simply pinch the muscle belly and extend the arm. If you feel like you're not getting enough pressure with your fingertips, use a lacrosse ball. Try one of two positions, either holding with your fingers or pressed with the palm into the bicep. I find I get better pressure when I use my palm. Remember to squeeze and extend. Another muscle that could create bicep pain is actually in your forearm. This is the brachioradialis, which passes from the humerus towards the wrist. To begin working the brachioradialis, reach under the elbow across to the forearm and pinch down as hard as you can tolerate. Now rotate the wrist, and the muscle should feel like it grinds underneath the fingertips. Do 7 to 10 repetitions, then locate a new point and continue to grind over that muscle. You should feel the fingers drop off the muscle. When you finish, put the fingers on top of the arm, pinch down, and create extension while rotating the wrist. Again, bend the elbow, then extend while you rotate the wrist. Notice my hand goes palm to chest, then palm to floor while I'm extending my elbow. Perform 7 to 10 repetitions and then move on to the next tender spot and repeat. When you have finished the pin and stretch, move on to cross fiber friction. Place the arm you are working across your knees, then grind the opposite forearm across the muscle tissue near the bicep head. This should be an abrasive force moving through the muscle tissue quickly. Continue to press through that muscle tissue until you feel like you've broken down the entire thing.